Carlos Santana was born on July the 20th, 1947, in the small village of Autlan de Navarro, Mexico, to José Santana and Josefina Barrangán. His father, José, was a traditional violinist, guitarist, and mariachi musician. His mother was a full-time housewife. Carlos had 6 siblings, 2 boys, Antonia and Jorge, and 4 girls, Irma, Lelicia, Louise, and Maria. Carlos was heavily influenced by music from a very young age. His closest and heaviest musical influence as a child was his father, who was also his first musical teacher and band leader. At the age of 5, Carlos learned to play the violin, and at the age of 8, he already knew how to play the guitar, thanks to his father. As he grew, he was influenced by Richie Valens. Back then, there were very few Mexican musicians in American rock and pop music. In 1955, José moved his family from Autlan de Navarro to Tijuana, the border city between Mexico and California. Carlos, now 8, fell under the influence of blues performers like B.B. King, Javier Bartiz, Mike Bloomfield, and John Lee Hooker. He soon began to perform in Tijuana strip clubs. Between the ages of 10 and 12, Carlos was sexually molested by an American man who brought him across the border. In the early 1960s, José moved his family again, but this time around to San Francisco. In San Francisco, Carlos was opportune to see his idols perform live. He was also introduced to several new musical influences, such as international folk and jazz music. Carlos also witnessed the rising hippie movement of the 1960s, centered in San Francisco. But Carlos' parents knew that he would need formal education, so he was enrolled at the James Lick Middle School. After graduation, he went further to Mission High School and graduated in 1965. That same year, he became a naturalized American citizen. Carlos was offered admission to the California State University Northridge and Humboldt State University, but he chose not to attend the university. After working for several years as a dishwasher in a local diner and playing the guitar for spare change on the streets, he decided to go fully into music. In 1966, Carlos started the Santana Blues Band in San Francisco with fellow street musicians David Brown as his bassist, Marcus Malone as his percussionist, and Greg Rowley as his keyboard player. By 1968, his band had begun to incorporate different types of influences into their electric blues. The band began to gain popularity and followers after it performed a blend of Latin-infused rock, African rhythms, and jazz at Woodstock in 1969. The band also changed its name to Santana. The band's outstanding success at Woodstock helped the band to secure its first contract with CBS Records, which was being controlled by Clive Davis. Santana went on to record its first eponymous album, which was released in 1969. More than 4 million copies of the album were sold, and the album became one of the best-selling albums of that time. The album made it to the Billboard charts and remained there for more than 2 years. The band also catapulted to international acclaim due to the album. The following year, the band released its second album, Abraxas, which contained 2 hit singles, Oye Como Va and Black Magic Woman. The band released its third album, Santana 3, in 1971, and its fourth album, Caravanserai, in 1972. Both Santana 3 and Caravanserai witnessed massive success. Over the years, Santana witnessed the entry and exit of many members, that the band became synonymous with Carlos himself. Also, the band began to grow so large that Carlos began to resent some of the members. He went solo. Carlos began his solo career in 1979, sponsored by CBS Records. That year, he released Oneness, Silver Dreams Golden Reality, and the following year, he released The Swing of Delight. During this time, his spiritual guru, Sri Chinmoy, pressured him to balance his rock music life with the spiritual music life. All through the 1980s, Carlos participated in several singles and also released a few albums, which included Shango, Beyond Appearances, and Freedom. Carlos produced the soundtrack used in the 1987 American film La Bamba, a movie based on the life of Ritchie Valens, who was his childhood icon. In 1988, Carlos organized a reunion with all his former band members and compiled the band's accomplishments in the album called Viva Santana. The album was produced by CBS Records. Carlos also tried out jazz fusion in Santana's fifth album, Welcome, which was also released in 1973. The following year, the band released another album, Lotus. That same year, Carlos married Deborah King, and the couple went on to have 3 children. Together with his wife, Carlos founded a non-profit organization named Milagro. But after 34 years in marriage, the couple divorced in 2007. 3 years later, Carlos got married to Cindy Blackman, and he is currently living with her in Las Vegas. From the period of 1974 to 1978, Carlos was part of the following albums: Inner Secrets, Moonflower, Amigos, Borboleta, and Illuminations. After 22 years, Carlos left CBS Records in 1990 and signed on a new record deal with Polygram. During the early 1990s, Carlos realized very poor sales of his records. His music career also remained relatively quiet until he joined forces with Clive Davis of Arista Records in 1997. It was then that his music career revived. During the summer of 1999, Carlos released an album titled Supernatural. The album included several international superstar artists like Rob Thomas, Lauryn Hill, and Wyclef Jean. The album brought Carlos back into the limelight. One of the singles in the album, Smooth, which he co-wrote with Rob Thomas and Ital Scher, was what catapulted Carlos to his legendary status. Supernatural was a huge success and sold over 15 million copies in the US alone. The album won the Album of the Year, and the single Smooth won the Best Song of the Year and the Best Record of the Year. The album placed Carlos in a tie with Michael Jackson for the artist with the greatest number of Grammy Award wins in a single year. In the period between 2002 and 2005, Carlos released Shaman. He also contributed to several albums by other artists, such as Oral Fixation Volume 2 and Possibilities. He produced an album titled All That I Am. The album consisted of his collaborations with other musicians. Towards the end of 2008, Carlos released another solo album, Acoustic Demos. He also performed for the American Idol finale. As part of his Supernatural Santana trip through the hits tour, Carlos gave a live performance at the Athens Olympic Stadium with his 10-member band in 2009. In 2012, Santana released the album Shape Shifter, which was the 22nd album produced by the band, but under a new record label, Starfish Records. Santana signed a new record deal with Concord in 2018. The first song produced in the contract was In Search of the Mona Lisa, which was released in January of 2019. All in all, his persistence and passion for music pushed him to become the successful, award-winning music icon that he is today. All in all, his persistence and passion for music pushed him to become the successful, award-winning music icon that he is today.